thought was like, it was just raging with symbolism. And, right, even in the beginning of the movie, it says, "In the beginning," right? And that's one of the first sentences in the Genesis book in the Bible, right? So it gives me a lot of vibes of creation and the idea of just creation in general, but particularly then leaning towards the idea of motherhood and fatherhood. Just the light and the dark and the progression of our universe. I noticed a lot of really interesting things about it, and I know we're going to probably touch on those, but I just found it so interesting that they call Hollywood for a reason, because they brought them from the holly tree that they made the wands with that they used to cast spells, and they are using these things to share information with us and cast these spells into our awareness. And that's actually why they call them the movie cast, right? Why they're cast into movies, which is so interesting. But I got a lot of thoughts on the symbolism and things like that, but I think I'm going to let you dive into it first, and then we'll go from there, and I'll see if I can put my 2 cents in after we do that.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. The something I would like to point out to the people is that the actual writers of Marvel Comics were privy to some ultra secret meetings back in the early 50s regarding highly advanced information, alien tech, different types of extraterrestrial races. They were being informed about everything that the people within the secret space program have known for the last 70 years. And so they were told not to share this with the public. So what they did is they decided to just do it in a nonchalant way where they were able to create characters, create stories, themes, plots, and that's how the comics were born. So if people think that these were all just made up stories, when you think of even recently, as you watch these movies with Captain America, the super soldier, he was the first super soldier. I mean, there's so much truth to that. There's thousands and thousands of super soldiers that have served within the secret space program function known as Solar Warden, that were genetically enhanced to go fight these wars up in space against these regressive aliens. When you think of the concept of Iron Man, it's all portraying the battle between the Alliance and the Cabal. That last film where the villain was he was supposed to be representing bin Laden. He was, from Saudi Arabia, and he was known as a terrorist. But he was a hired actor from our own vice president, who was actually representing and supposed to resemble Dick Cheney, right? So it all goes back to that, 9/11 thing. So these Marvel characters, these Marvel stories are disclosing information in movie forms. When you think of the concept Thor, the movie Thor, the idea of the 9 realms, right? And then you have the center of the galaxy where the Guardians live. And from the center of the galaxy, they're able to guard the 9 different realms, right? Anaheim, I think, I forget all their names, but when you study the secret knowledge and you study about how our galaxy itself is divided into 9 sectors or 9 districts, again, there's another similarity there. So every Marvel movie has some sort of disclosure in it. And this last movie, The Eternals, was just like you said, it was just everything put together in a sense where it's like in the beginning. In the beginning, there was something before, or nothing, they say, and then everything was created. Well, I mean, there's a lot of truth to that, but I would like to say that before everything was created, there was something that existed that had no beginning or end. And this is how it relates to my book. Well, before I dive into that, I just want people to know that according to quantum physics and according to scientific observations, we're only piercing into the 4% of our so-called universe. The other 96%, they call dark matter and dark energy. So it is within that other 96% that these higher levels of reality beyond the galactic rims, beyond the galaxies that we see, exist. And that's what I would like to talk about. So the galaxy exists within 11 dimensions, but if we go beyond the 11th dimension, then we have other dimensions that go all the way up into even dimension 256. But again, all these other dimensions beyond the 11th encompass what scientists would label as dark matter and dark energy. So one of the things that I talk about in my book, in chapter 5, is the idea that our universe is one of many universes. So I'm going to start from the top. So in the beginning, before creation, before the concept of time and space, there was Havana, the central mother universe. And Havana is an eventuated reality without beginning or end. It is a reality that has always existed, and similarly to what the scientists call the metaverse. When the scientists first came up with the concept of the idea that we live in a multiverse, they talked about this idea that these universes are being born from some sort of a motherverse, but that motherverse, which they label as the metaverse, has never had a beginning or end. So this corresponds very scientifically and validates the concept of the central universe. So the central universe was first divided into 7 segments. So there's 7 super universes. So that was the beginning of what we call time. It was the one dividing itself into 7. And then when the one divided itself into 7, that became known as the super universe levels of reality. So in turn, each super universe divides into 10 major sectors. So if you times 10 times 7, we have a total of 10 major sectors that exist within the periphery of our central universe. And then each major sector also divides into 100 minor sectors. So there's about 70,000 minor sectors that exist within the periphery of our central universe. And then in turn, each minor sector divides into 700,000 local universes. And so, so there's, about 100,000 local universes. So there's about 700,000 local universes. So each minor sector has 100,000 local universes. And then in turn, each local universe divides itself into 100 constellations. So when you times that by 700,000 local universes, we end up with 70 billion constellations in existence. And then in turn, it goes further. Each constellation divides into 1,000 systems. So if you times that by 1,000 systems, then we have about a total of 70 billion systems. And then in turn, each system has 1,000 worlds. So if you times that by 1,000 worlds, then we have about 7.5 trillion evolving about 7.5 trillion worlds that are evolving within the periphery of the entire Mother Central Universe. And then, one of the things that I talk about is that, for the most part, most people only understand the galactic level of reality, which is, governed by the different advanced galactic and stellar races that have formed different spiritual councils, right? So we know that the Galactic Federation was a coalition of all these different star nations within each galaxy that came together to create a coalition of light. So in our galaxy, at the head of this coalition of light, we have what is known as the Sirian High Council from Sirius. So Sirius is the high regional council that oversees all the operations within our galaxy. And then beyond our galaxy, we have a union between different galaxies known as an intergalactic council, which is also known, which is what I call in my book, the Council of the Union of Days. Now, at that level of reality, we have the creator gods. The creator gods themselves are beings that descended from the central mother universe into the lower realms, into the realms of time and space in order to facilitate and administrate their own creations. So each local universe is given a pair, an Omni King and an Omni Queen, that oversees and administrates the rays and the light source energy into its creation. And how does it do it? Through the concept of the central sun. So each universe has a central sun, and in turn, the central sun of each universe sends its light source to the billions of galaxies, and then it resonates at the center of every galaxy, so it starts all over. So each galaxy also has a central sun. So the councils are also being reflected on the galactic levels of reality. So kind of like the movie Thor, we have the Asgardians, right, who represent a galactic level of reality, right, that oversee the 9 realms, or in our case, the 9 districts. But who would be the Asgardians in our galaxy? The Sirians, the Sirian High Council. They're the ones that are overseeing the 9 sectors of our galaxy and are the ones that are in charge of the Galactic Federation in our galaxy. But there is even higher levels of celestial administrations that go beyond the creator gods, though. And this is one of the things that I talk about in my book. So the creator gods themselves answer to the order of the Ancient of Days. So now we're starting to get into the realms of eternity without beginning or end, super universe level. So the order of the Ancient of Days are the administrators of the 7 super universes. So each super universe has a council, known as the Ancient of Days, that administrate the light rays that are being sent to all the different local universes from that segment. So each local universe has I think there's 3 Ancient of Days per local universe, because they're also representing the grand central trinity of the Father, Mother, Child. And the child is really just the integration and unification of, Mother God Sophia and the Christ, which is the Christos energy. And the Christos energy is what's resonating at the central suns. That is what brings forth all the life force, the universal source energy that gives life to the galaxies in turn, and then the galaxies give that light to the solar systems, and then the solar systems give that light to the planets. So everything is vibrating to the tune of the central suns. The central suns are all connected through resonance. And so beyond the order of the celestial, or what they call beyond the order of the Ancient of Days, then we have the order of the Eternals. And the order of the Eternal of Days are exactly what Marvel talks about when he talks about these beings that have existed before anything. And those were the ones that facilitated the 7 super universes. So in my book, these beings are known as the central race of Havona. And the central race of Havona are really the intelligences that have never had a beginning or end. And they are the ones that gave birth to the governors or the administrators of the 7 super universes, and then in turn they gave birth to the creator gods and goddesses that oversee the realms of the local universes. So this heavenly administration goes beyond the Galactic Federation. I mean, the Galactic Federation is only 4%, because these higher levels of reality that science calls dark matter and dark energy exist beyond the 11th dimensional spheres of the different galaxies. So, I just wanted to, share that with people. There's a lot of truth to those movies.
All right. So when you talk about this, and it's funny, as I'm watching that, people are saying stuff like, you need to get this into a map. Can we get a visual of it? And it sounds like the way you talk about it, like you see this in your head already. Like it's almost like, I guess, I'm assuming that while you were meditating, astral projecting, that you visually experience this, in your third eye. So what I'd like to do is ask you a few questions that are going to then try to help solidify this visualization for myself and for everyone else that's here as well. And also try to kind of like reflect it back on the movie as well. So number one, it sounds like there's this state of infiniteness, right? Where that seems to be near the top. And then through that state of infinitude, then it comes down into these creator gods.
Well, there's different levels between the state of infinity, or what I call the realms of the always existing realms. They first divide into 7 aspects of itself, and then those 7 aspects further divide into major sectors, and then the major sectors into minor sectors, and then the local universes come into play. So before we even get to the order of the creator gods, which represent the union of the Ancient of Days, we have the order of the Eternal of Days, which are the celestial architects. Those are it's like prime source dividing into 3 and then 7. Okay, so we're always looking at the one architect. The one architect is prime source. So that is the spirit of the central universe. And then that one spirit divided into 3 aspects of itself, and then to 7. But in each aspect, just like the holographic concept of reality, each aspect, like the fractal in a hologram, reflects the whole. So in each aspect, we also have the Trinity, the Father, Mother, Child, Father, Mother, Child. And that's why there's 3 Ancient of Days per super universe, because it represents the balance, the triune of the Mother, Father, Child. And so that level of reality is reflected all the way down into the lower spheres, all the way down to the local universe, and eventually the galaxies and the planets.
I kind of put it in terms of, source, or that before that Big Bang sort of experience when everything was one. The first initial fragmentation would have been, I don't know if this is the right term for it, but I've heard it referred to as like Elohim, or like that original separation, which would be 1 turns into 2, right? And then through that 2, those 2 can then turn into have that sort of mother-father figure, which then goes down into that so in the movie they have the Celestials, which is like Arisham and the other one's name, Tiamat. What would the Celestials be considered? Would they be considered those seven original infinite beings?
Yes, the seven original, where the central universe first breaks off into seven aspects of itself. Those are considered equivalent to those what Marvel calls the Celestials, because they're still infinite. They're just the ones that are going to continue building the architectural structures for the simulation of realities. Because once it goes beyond the level of local universe, super universe, we start getting into simulations. The idea that everything's really a hologram. The only base reality is the seven super universes and the central universe. That's base reality. That's eternity. That's infinity. And then we start getting into the lower dimensions. And then that's when the simulation kicks in. Yeah.
And then the creator gods would be
the facilitators of the simulations. They are the ones that administrate the
right?
Yeah, the creator gods are kind of like the Eternals. They're working for the Celestials, so the Celestials are kind of like the order of the Ancient of Days and the Eternal of Days, which is equivalent to what the mystics call the Emerald Covenant, or the Order of the Emerald Shining Ones.
Okay.
Yeah, and they are at the highest level. They control everything, all the multiverse. Yeah.
Would the Eternals also be sort of considered what a lot of people would consider sort of the angelic realm today, like those where they're participating on Earth but they can't interfere? Or would they, like, what kind of entity would we consider them?
Well, they are immortal, and we could also classify the idea that the angelics, the archangelics, and those that are working for the One are working within the order of the Union of Days, which is they serve the creator gods. Yeah. They serve the creator gods and goddesses of each local universe. And so they have, people that are helping them, other spirit beings. And so what we consider the fallen ones, those are the ones that are the fallen Elohim, because the first war that broke out in the very first universes, even before this universe was facilitated, was the War of the Elohim, which was like billions and I think 200 billion years ago. 250 billion years, the first and what that was a rebellion that took place between one universe, a creator god in one universe, who decided to become a tyrant and a dictator. He was no longer resonating and operating according to the universal rules and laws of divinity and oneness. It was more like he separated from singular consciousness. And so the first being that did that was known as Samana. Lucifer was one of many. But see, again, the way they teach us things in our world is that everything's based on the concept of this one universe. But even before this universe existed, there were other rebellions against the One. So Samana was the first rebellion, and that was 250 billion years ago.
And it seems like based on what you're saying that, first of all, it would be hilarious to think that, is there intelligent somewhere else in the universe? Like, clearly so massive, there's got to be something else out there, right? So the idea of Lucifer, the idea of like that, is there things like that happening right now at different stages in parallel to?
Yes, because creation is endless. As I speak, new and new universes are coming into existence daily. So the number that I said, 7 trillion and a half, is just constantly growing. Yeah.
So I want to talk about as well, in the movie they have these things called the deviants. Are essentially, for anyone that hasn't seen the movie, they're like the antagonists of the movie. They're the enemies. What would the deviants be considered in terms of your perspective on this?
The deviants are the fallen Elohim. They are the fallen Elohim. They are what we consider in the Bible the fallen angelics. And in terms of describing them in terms of like lower levels of reality, they're considered the Draco, the Omnicrons, the Shatari. There's different names to describe the fallen ones.
Well, it's interesting that they call them the deviants, because I like the name. It gives you a certain like imagery. They say that, but it's also the root word of it is to deviate, right? It's almost like they're deviating away from that law of one.
Exactly.
We talk about the sin is translated in many different ways, but as far as I perceive it to be, the sin is heart, right?
You're correct.
So, so I think it's interesting that these, like, I was watching something earlier today, and it said that some of these deviants on our planet could also be considered maybe things like big pharma, big tech, AI, things like BlackRock and Vanguard that are attempting to go against the idea of service to others, that the idea that we actually are all one, and trying to get into this control state, which kind of goes back to what you were saying of that original war, where there was one group that deviated that said we wanted to dominate and control, which goes against the law of one, and then the other group, the group of light, that was trying to stop that, eventually won. Right?
Exactly. Well, it's funny that you say AI, because the first rebel against the light, which goes back to the 11th creation, because we're part of the 12th creation. Our universe hangs in the 12th creation. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. His name was Lord Samana, and he was one of 12 cosmic adepts. And when he fell, when he realized that he could no longer facilitate a vehicle known as the Atom Catmull, he decided to create his own vehicles in the form of artificial intelligence. So the original artificial intelligence that was developed was 250 billion years ago. And he's been using AI to try to suck up and control this entire reality and the what I call the 15-dimensional time matrix, all the entire multiverse that hangs within the 12th creation. And now what we're dealing with here in our world is just the repercussion of that. It is that final war against this ultimate enemy villain, which is a cosmic ancient AI. In the secret space program, they call him the AI god, that even the Draco and the Mantis and the Greys, all the regressive aliens answer to this person or to this collective, because it's really a collective. It's non-physical. It actually operates all the way from the 11th dimension. And that's why this AI from the 11th dimension was able to destroy one of the fourth Earth, known as Antimateria. Antimateria was the original Earth before it became Terra. Before it became Gaia, and then Gaia fell into Terra as it, lowered into lower density, and then Terra became Earth. But I forget the name of it, but Arimatina, that's the name of it. Arimatina was one of the Earths that existed in the 13th dimension or 12th dimension, and the 12th dimensional Stargate was actually infiltrated by this AI god, and then that's when the wars began. The Elohim Wars, which later translated as the Electric Wars and then the Galactic Wars. And now we're just like ending that. We're finally finishing that last battle against that. So yeah, definitely artificial intelligence is a huge player in terms of the dark side, and it has been for billions of years.
Yeah, and this is what a lot of people have recently been talking about with Elon Musk. Because Elon Musk seems to be, in many ways, like championing freedom and being anti-government, anti-establishment. Using the name Tesla to talk about technologies, but in a lot of ways, he's going against what Tesla would have done, and he's really being a huge advocate for everything that is transhumanism and AI and all that stuff too. So. What's interesting too, and something I noticed, is that there was 10 Eternals in the movie, and it seemed as though that there were 5 of them that were fighters and 5 of them that were nurturers. So it was like split right down the middle of like the father figure and the mother figures.
It's the balance.
Yeah. But, and it's interesting too, because when in the Bible it talks a lot about when Cain and Abel, some of the sons of Adam and Eve, when they were first created, a portion of them went to be hunters and a portion of them went to be farmers, right? And it's that initial separation that where they eventually came back together again. Anyways, I thought that was interesting. But would you consider the Eternals this 144,000 group?
Absolutely. Yes, it's symbolically to the return of the Elohim, in order to initiate the golden age of enlightenment once again, and do away with the last bit of evil.
Now,
But ultimately, we are going to be dealing with a future battle against this AI god. This AI god has also created what is known as the Phantom Matrix. It created an alternative multiverse outside of our living organic central universe. And so in about, how the Bible talks about there's going to be peace for 1,000 years, but then after 1,000 years, evil is going to be unleashed again. Well, that's what this thing is. It's going to merge once again. But at that point, the 144,000, as we continue to activate more strands of DNA beyond the 12, we're going to go to the 24th, 48. We're going to have these amazing godlike superpowers. And so because we are an experimental intergalactic experiment, a super hybrid race where many universes contributed their DNA in order to create this hybrid super, race, we will be defeating the AI. So the final war is against this AI, but that's when we are in our fullest capacity, not in these, two-strand DNA carbon-based matter form.
Yeah. And I remember I was having a conversation with a friend once about extraterrestrials or these higher evolved beings of any kind, and I was like, how with this hands and the limited, technology I have now, how am I gonna take on something like that? And he says, when the time comes, you'll know. Right. And so I feel like that kind of goes with what you're saying, where it's like, once we get to that point, maybe we can shoot laser beams out of our eyes, or maybe we can, pull swords like Thena does. I just thought that was pretty cool. I wanted to ask you as well about the Unimind, because I know that was a big factor in the movie of them being able to stop the Celestial. So let's talk about the Unimind, but let's also talk about the fact that they stopped their creators. They kind of in some ways, they rebelled from their own gods. So can you explain the idea of the Unimind and the memory and the social memory complex, but also
Sure.
The role that we're about to, this place in the universe that we are right now, and what we're about to experience, and the idea of rebelling from what the creator has planned for us?
Absolutely. So the concept of the Unimind is the idea that when the 144,000 come together, we will create a collective, what is known as a social memory complex, which is a synergy of all our energies combined. And that's what's going to happen when we fight this future war. And so what the movie's Eternals portrayed was, first of all, the fact that they decided to save the human race was because over the years, as they were guarding the human race over a period of 7,000 years, they felt a connection to the humans, to the Earth Terrans. They felt like, why would this planet be destroyed in order for another celestial to be born when these people are good? These people are evolving. They're actually progressing. And they saw that in these humans. And that's why the immortals decided to get together into this unison mind, which is pretty much combining their synergy in order to prevent the born or the this celestial to destroy, in order to prevent the destruction that was going to happen as a result of the celestial being born from the earth. But they did it out of love for humanity. They fell in love with the human race. And that also teaches us how Jesus, he sacrificed himself because his love for humanity was so much greater. He could have easily told the angels when he was on that cross being crucified, he could have said, hey, come down, destroy and wipe out the Roman armies. But he did it out of love. He did it because he loved the human race. And he knew what he was doing. So it was the same concept. It was their sacrifice, knowing that, hey, the celestial ashram, whatever his name is probably going to, deal with us for doing this. But they did it out of love, and they took a leap of faith. And that's the same concept of Jesus being crucified on the cross. It was the same idea. He did it because his love for humanity.
In terms of the Unimind, what does that mean to be a part of a social memory complex? Does that mean that anybody that's a part of this, that I can read their minds, they can read my mind, we can others information? Is there going to be a lack of privacy in some ways in that?
No, it's going to be a balance of both. As we evolve beyond the sixth density or sixth dimension, that's when we become a unified mind or a social memory complex. But as when we become that, we're still going to maintain our individual state of minds. We're still going to have the ability to have our own privacy and not, by willpower, not allow others to read our minds or anything, but because everyone's going to be so pure and everyone's going to be so righteous. Everyone's going to be like an open book. There's no, no one's going to be thinking any negative thoughts. Nobody is going to be thinking any ill will against anybody. So it's one of those things where people are going to be able to be their own individual self while working within the collective. So it's going to be a balance. It's going to be a balance between both.
Now, in terms of actual individual characters, so I don't know if maybe you can speak to that, because I think different characters. Let's start with Icarus.
With who?
Icarus, the main guy with the shooting eyes, and he was fluent. Is there any significance to that character at all?
Yes, well, like I was saying earlier, there's always the concept of the fall of the Elohim. There's certain times where the Elohim or other immortals fall from the idea of unity consciousness or the concept of service to others. And so he represented the fallen ones. He represented symbolically, metaphorically speaking, he represented the idea of falling from this, being one with God to just doing his own thing. Yeah. So he represents the fallen ones.
And then you had Ajax, the sort of first figure, which was interesting too, because it felt like she was that mother figure, and then she had to let her children go out on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Any significance to her as a character, and maybe even that golden ball that came out of her chest? Any meaning that you see within that?
Are you talking about the one that was sacrificed to the deviants, that was pushed into the pit?
Yeah.
Yeah, she represents the mother figure. The idea of this mother who sacrificed herself for the sake of others. So in this case, she represented Mother Mary.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And then you had the guy with the technology, which I thought was interesting.
Right. Yeah.
Who and I don't know if they were doing this, and because I one thing I did know about the movie is that there was quite a diverse cast. So they did make the technology guy. He was gay in the movie, and he had his family that he was building. What do you think the purpose for them was to make a guy that was so into making technology? Do you think it was because human beings also we get sort of our technological inspiration from
extraterrestrials?
Yeah,
absolutely. And that's exactly what happened within our own civilization. When we fell from Atlantis, it was the extraterrestrials that went into the underground, the ancient Lemurians and Atlanteans that survived in Agartha, that would sometimes come up to the surface world and say, hey, it's best to do it like this. And then, a new science was born, or a new technology was born. Throughout the ages, extraterrestrials, benevolent extraterrestrials, whether they were coming from inner Earth or whether they were coming from the stars, have always assisted us in the development of technology, depending on the level of evolution where we were, and based on the idea that if we were ready for it, of course, because we had to be ready for it before they introduced a new concept. Right. So that's how we gradually progressed, because we've always received assistance from extraterrestrials. So that's what that guy represents symbolically.
Yeah, I heard this too, that, we were like this close to having like atomic energy that could have powered our entire planet, but then we needed to make a bomb, right? And so they're like, oh, well, I guess you guys were...
right.
And that's
well, that's kind of like the idea that you can either use technology for good or evil,
right?
So there's also a duality in that.
Yes, and it's also probably why a lot of people will be working on the same idea at the same time, because they're actually tuning into whatever is there.
It is the extraterrestrials sometimes will beam the right idea or download the information to people in different parts of the globe, like in Europe and America, and they both come up with the same concept at the same time. And I think that's how the Marconi and other people were able to develop the concept of the telephone. It was downloaded to them by the same beings in different parts of the world.
Really excited to see what else is going to come forth. Like something that I couldn't even imagine. Right? I mean, even if you told me 10 years ago that, hey, if you pick up this device or you pick up a telephone, you can carry it with you everywhere you go, and you can call a stranger to pick you up in a car by pressing a few buttons. I don't think so, right?
Well, I don't know who said it, but this is a famous quote where in some cases, advanced technology appears to be magic to
Yeah,
cultures that are less primitive.
yeah, 100.
Um,
I mean, if you take a phone and you take it back like, you know, 10, 20, 30, even 100 years ago, they would, 100 years ago, they would think you have sort of witchcraft going on, and they'd probably try to burn
yes.
you.
Right. Exactly. It's always been that way.
There's also other characters too. There's a character named Druid, and I was actually watching sort of a review of the movie, and it's interesting. They referred to Druid as potentially the Lucifer character, which I thought was interesting because he was one of the first of the Eternals to say, I'm stepping away and walking away from the group, right? So he was one of those original that kind of stepped away, but also his whole power was controlling the minds of humans, which I thought
that was interesting.
What's your take on that character?
I think there was a balance of powers with all 10 of them, just like they were broken off into, the male energies and the female energies. I think each character had its own individual power, and so his ability was mind control. So in a sense, metaphorically speaking, he represents the idea of how society, in a sense, is programmed through mind control. And so, which is being used for negative, nefarious reasons. And so, yeah, that's just one example of that.
That I wouldn't say that maybe control people's minds, but let's say this like Orion group might come in and start seeds in the minds of people and planting seeds of self-service into people's minds.
Well, that's how they work. They use advanced technology. They use the rings of Saturn for thousands of years. Were placed there by the fallen ones, the Dracos. They use the moon, right, to bring forth those energies, and then beam them over to the planet in order to kind of control people's minds through frequency. So that's been happening for thousands of years. But luckily, the forces of good and the Federation have neutralized all that technology because of the times that we're in.
I got a few more questions too. If anyone wants to there's an element of that we learn. The question I keep seeing coming up here is about the moon. Do you think, what's your thoughts on the moon? Is it a satellite? Is it a planet? Is it?
It's an artificial construct, mainly made out of some sort of aluminum. It's metal. Yeah, it's like the inside of the moon is hollow, and from the inside of the moon, the negative extraterrestrials have been using it to transfer some of the energies that were being generated. Also, the rings of Saturn are artificial constructs. They weren't always there. I think they've only been built within the last million years. But before that, Saturn didn't have rings.
So what's the point of the moon then?
The point of the moon was to control humanity, to keep us in a very low state, a very low frequency, But it's not working anymore because now we're shifting. Now we're entering a new era, and so the light has been kind of eliminating all the bad stuff already. Because we're going to be entering the golden age of enlightenment, the seventh golden age of enlightenment.
Okay.
So all that stuff is being neutralized. It's part of the prophecies.
All right, I'm trying to get these questions in here. It's because there's a lot of people, and someone's saying about doing like moon magic, the effects of the moon on the waves, on people's emotions. How can it do that if it's just like a thing of aluminum?
Because it's directing energy. It's a celestial artifact construct that is, it's the way it was created. Okay, before our moon, we had two moons. One moon was used by the Dracos when they infiltrated Atlantis in order to implode it over Lemuria, and that's how they were able to destroy Lemuria, which I explained in chapter 11. This other moon that was created was there to kind of give an imbalance of energy so that we don't get the full cosmic rays that would have activated our DNA, and so it's there as a way to obstruct that. And at the same time is there to also act like as an antenna to the energy that's coming from Saturn in order to beam it to us and keep us in a very low frequency.
So it's interesting actually, because I found that I was using the moon for like manifestation energy, but it's almost like I should maybe be using the sun as manifestation energy.
Yes, the sun is the source of all life.
Interesting. A lot of questions that keep coming up too is about the idea of what are the precise elements that activate our DNA?
The gamma rays that are coming in, the photonic energy that is coming in from the central sun. It is loaded with light codes, pockets of energy that activate the different filament strand. Our DNA acts like they're like filament gossamer strands that act like wireless cables, and so when it receives the new code, the new information that is coming in through our sun, it begins to activate that, and then these filaments start forming the other strands. They start rebuilding them, and then they start turning on. So it's very connected to the solar energy that is coming in right now, or what we call the gamma ray, energy.
Okay, so actually got a question from a friend of mine, and in the spirit of Black History Month and the celebration of our brothers and sisters, is there a significance in terms of the race that we experience on a physical level, and maybe the race that we're experiencing on a physical level, and maybe the race that we were prior to coming to this planet?
Well, before we became physical, we were etheric. We were mind. We were just spirit mind. Now we're spirit mind matter complex. But there's different levels of matter mind complex or different levels of mind. So we are experiencing the carbon-based matter. But as we go up into dimensions, we become silicon matter, and then we become etheric silicon. No more matter. It's just light body. And then beyond that, we become hydroplasmic pure light essence, and then beyond that we just become pure light. So those are the different grades of our that embody ourselves as we are spiritual light beings. We encase in different avatars or in different vehicles in order to experience the different bandwidths of this light energy spectrum that breaks off into different frequencies in order for us to experience the different levels of reality. But to answer his questions, in essence, we're just spirit. That's what we are when it comes to our essence. We are just spirit. This is just a vehicle.
So there's no relation to skin color that or the race that we're born into here.
No, because we've all been born in different races. We've all been, different people, different nationalities, and different incarnations. Sometimes people are born in these different races in order to experience, different aspects of being human and stuff. But there is no distinction. Yeah.
I've actually heard that because that would make sense. I was reading a book. I feel like it's called the Complete Ascension Manual, or maybe something else, and it talks about how it wasn't that. It was actually a book from an indigenous group that was talking about these prophets of this new spiritual group that's going to be this new human race that's going to be entering the earth, and they say that every single race has a missing chakra. And that when all the races decide to come together and unite, that they start to realize their superhuman potential. So I think it would be interesting, kind of like you said, that if everybody had that life experience of being a part of the race, that they could experience different combinations of what it is, and eventually come back to that unification that will bring us back to that social memory complex.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. Sorry?
Go ahead.
No, I just said, yeah, you're absolutely correct.
And somebody was asking, is there any symptoms that you expect when your DNA is being upgraded?
Yes, lower back pain, because what's happening is the Kundalini energy is going up from the coil, from the base of your spine, up to your crown chakra. That's a strong indicator. Sometimes people forget, they lose track of time because you're quantum jumping into the fifth dimensional level of reality where time doesn't exist. At times you might get some headaches, because your pineal gland and your pituitary gland are also turning on. So there's different symptoms, Sometimes you might feel like you're catching a cold, and all of a sudden, a few hours later, you're fine. It's because you're going through bodily changes. So there's many symptoms, ascension symptoms.
Is there any foods in particular that we should be focused on if we're trying to? On our last live, we had talked to pretty much everyone that followed me. When I asked them, what are you focused on right now? Many of them said, my ascension, right? They're focused on their ascension, right? And so, is there any food in general that can assist with people's ascension?
cut the artery and in their throat, and they would have a heart attack. So they were known as psychic killers. Again, I this is just information that was revealed within the secret space program. But then again, for those that are vegan and vegetarian, it's great to not eat meat, because then you're doing a service to the animals. You're allowing your digestive system to function better, and to really process and break down the foods much faster and healthier. But I have a type of system where it's like, if I tried being vegan, it's just my body it doesn't operate as well. My energy levels go down. So everybody's different. No judgment here, people. If you guys want to judge me for eating chicken and turkey and fish, then that's fine with me. But I hold no judgment. I love everyone. And everyone's different, so I respect everyone. So it all depends on the individual. However, if you are going to be eating meat, make sure it's organic. Make sure it's not with no antibiotics. Make sure it's raised in a free-range type of scenario where the chickens are roaming free, and not being given all these hormones. You have to eat meat that is purely organic. You can't be eating meat that has antibiotics or hormones, because then you're as good as eating GMOs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Friend, we're coming to the end of the end of live here. I just want to say thank you again for.
You're welcome.
Yes. Eddie, that's watching. I got my the mail is coming, and it'll be here on February 10th. So I'm super
Sweet.
Haven't gotten our. Maybe we go pick that up. This guy's reviewed so many incredible things about the nature of our reality and the nature of our universe and our galactic history. So it's definitely worth checking out. You can check the link in his bio, or you can Amazon and type in Our Cosmic Origin.
Thank you, Beau. I appreciate you being my special guest.
Having fantastic conversations, because it allows me to really get some clarity around things that I've been having questions about.
Super. It works out for the both of us.
Awesome. Okay. See you guys, my friend. We'll see you guys.
And that's it. And thank everybody. I just want to thank everybody that was joining us.